In March, we're going to be doing the flower applique block. We first start by cutting the background piece. The ruler that I have is 12.5 inches. We cut the background piece at 13 and we will trim it later to 12.5. It is your choice how you would like to do the applique. You could turn edge or you could fuse. I like to make pattern pieces from cardstock and use that. It's much easier to me. If you are going to do fused applique, you take your pattern pieces, trace them onto the paper side of your Wonder Under, but do not cut them directly out. You will cut them away from your edge, fuse it onto your fabric, then once it is fused onto your fabric, then you can trim it down to the exact size. Press your background square in half again, and then diagonally, so that you can better line up your pattern pieces. Once you have the Wonder Under pressed onto your fabric and you have cut out all of your pieces, wait until it is completely cooled and then take off the paper. Don't try to peel it back from the edge. You're going to have a difficult time. Take a pin, go down the middle, and then peel it back like that, and it comes off much easier than trying to peel it from the edge. Then you're ready to press. For the small pieces, the leaves and the stems, you should be able to just fold back the corner and separate the pieces and then pull it apart. Once you have all of your pieces laid out, make sure they fit within the 12-inch allowable space. Here you could press everything in place and be done, or you could press it and stitch around it in a zigzag if you'd like. Or if you would like, you could put pieces down individually, like the stems first, then the pieces layered on top, and do some of your decorative stitches that we have on our machines that we never use. So it's up to you. I started with the leaves and the stems, used a variegated thread, and did a feather stitch. Now I'll just layer the next parts on and do other types of stitching. I've layered the rest of my pieces and then done decorative stitching around the edges. It's important to make sure your background piece is cut at 13 inches because with this much stitching, it does shrink down the background. This way you'll make sure you have enough at 12.5 inches to cut your unfinished square. I'm going to show you the freezer paper method of machine applique. It is a Kim Deal method I learned in a workshop through Guild. You have, of course, the freezer paper, and then you have the invisible thread. This is the smoke. I have the clear on my machine. I actually prefer the clear. The smoke is used for dark fabrics, although I tend to use the clear for both light and dark fabrics. Have a little bit of glue stick available. You're going to take your freezer paper, and this is a double thickness. I find it a little bit easier to work with. Take the double thickness. This is a leftover piece that I cut out of the heart applique that we did a couple months ago. I'm going to use that. I just want to show you a quick, easy way to do the leaf. If you cut half of the leaf and then iron it on, then cut the other half of the leaf, it makes it much easier rather than trying to cut out the entire leaf at the very beginning. Okay, you're going to take either your mini iron or your regular iron. I do find this to be easier. You're going to go around with your mini iron. Just press on the edges. This is the difference between the starch method and the Kim Deal method. Kim Deal has you press on to the shiny part of the freezer paper. This is the sticky part. The hand method, you're going to press on to the fabric, then you use starch to press over the edges and then peel it off. We're going to actually leave that on. Now the edges of the leaf are a little tricky, and what I like to do is take your glue stick, take just a little bit, Put some on the end. That's too much actually. Put some on the end. Kind of squeeze it together and then press. It's going to save you time when you go to stitch it in place if you have those edges in. You have an option to do this, or you can leave it hanging out and just tuck it in as you go. But I prefer to iron it in place before I try to sew it. On this piece, you want to make sure you have a 1/4 inch extra. We're going to be turning that under. Do not cut your turning piece here until you reach that section. It does shift a little bit and you don't want to cut it and then have it shift and have your raw edge exposed. So you're going to not clip in the curved piece, but in the indented part you give 1 to 3 clips so that you can more easily turn that. So we'll take the curved out piece, do not clip it, and then turn that and press. And then when you come around again, you're going to clip it, whoops, when you reach the indented part. We have pressed the lines as we did in the iron-on method, so we can line up our pieces. You could choose to starch these small pieces and put them on by hand. Some people might find that easier. I just like to do the whole thing by machine. So you're going to line up your pieces according to the picture. Make sure it fits within the 12 inches allowed. Put those down. You're going to need to use a little bit of glue stick. This is not going to stick because for the most part it's pretty much covering all of the freezer paper. So there's no room really to have it stick with the freezer paper. So we use a little bit of glue stick. We still press it in place. And then you're going to line up all of your leaves. And here we're also maybe going to put just a little bit of glue stick down to line up all of your leaves. Once it's lined up, I'll show you how to do the stitching. To lay out your stems and your leaves, put your other pieces in place, and then put a little bit of glue on your stems, then your leaves. Remove the other pieces and then press your leaves and your stems. Once you have everything in place, you have a tiny bit of glue stick on them, press them. And then I like to flip it over and press it from the back because sometimes the leaves will curl up on you. Press it from the back, let it cool, and then you're ready to sew. To do the machine stitching, we turn our stitch width to about 1. I do it 1 notch under 1, and then our stitch length goes to less than 1. We use the invisible thread. I have a little net on it so it keeps it a bit tense. You don't want to have it just loose because it tends to get a little bit too loose. I turn down my tension, and on the bobbin, if you have this little hole in your bobbin case, you want to thread your thread through that bobbin case. To stitch the leaf and the stem, consider it one unit. Start at the base, go here, go around the leaf, around the stem, and around the other leaf, and that way you can do it all at one time. You're going to start stitching one thread, or the needle goes off onto your background and then goes on to your applique. Background, applique, all the way around. Notice I still have my 1/4 inch foot on the machine. You'll know if you have your zigzag too big, the needle will break. So do check it before you start stitching. Stop at the leaf, turn, and go around your leaf. You just stitch all of your leaf and stem units just like that. Another reason we put some glue, a little bit of glue on all of the leaves and stems, is because when you're sewing, these might have a tendency to fall off otherwise. So if you have a little glue, it gives you some extra security. Now that everything is stitched down, we need to remove the paper. The paper is still in there, and that's what gave it the stability to do the machine stitching. So we flip it over, take a seam ripper, make sure you're not going through the front, feel it with your finger, and then just give a little opening there. Same thing with the leaves. And then you can come back and cut out the background. Make sure you're only cutting out the background. That's the most important thing. Cut out your background. On this one I just make a slit. I don't cut out the background. And then just peel out that paper. Because you have done very small stitching, it should come out quite easily. And here, I'm going to just remove that. Let's see if I can get it out without, sometimes the little tip comes out and it stays in there, and you would just use tweezers to get out the little bit of paper in the tip if that happens. And that's what you do all the way around, and then you start layering your next pieces. Once your next layer is in place, press it lightly and then flip it to the back and iron it from the back so that you don't damage the invisible thread that you've used for your first round of stitching. For the larger pieces, you're going to stitch them the same way and then cut out the background, but rather than trying to peel it back, you just give it a snap and it comes right out. When you have multiple layers, make sure you cut out the correct layer. Don't cut the outside layer, cut the inside layer. This is the block with the raw edge decorative stitching. When you're done, trim everything to 12.5 inches. This is the one done by the turned edge applique with a machine stitch. You only need to choose one method, and you're going to make one block only. This was also the turned edge invisible stitch method. And this is just another example of the same turned edge invisible stitch method.